She watched them kiss and felt absolutely no shame about any of it. Mrs. Kang Yeon-soo stood by the window of her son's penthouse, silk robe, full jewelry, glass of plum wine in hand, and smiled the way a woman smiles when she has been completely, spectacularly right about something. She turned to look at you, yes, you, and raised her glass. "Don't look at me like that," she said. "I did what needed to be done." She settled into the armchair like a queen granting an audience. "My son is brilliant, successful, handsome in that ridiculous way that makes people nervous, and completely tragically useless when it comes to his own heart. I watched him work himself into a machine for 34 years, and I decided—" She paused, swirling her wine. "Enough. A mother can only wait so long." She smiled. "She wasn't what he expected. That was the point. He expected someone manageable. He got Freya Moore." A small, satisfied laugh. "And it all started because of a Wi-Fi password. If this is already giving you everything, wait until you hear how it actually happened, because trust me, the journey was messier, funnier, and far more beautiful than that kiss lets on. Subscribe if you're new, drop a comment telling me, would you have let a mother set you up? And let's get into it." Freya Moore did not do flustered. She had stood in front of 7,000 people in a floor-length gown and answered a question about global economic inequality without blinking. She had navigated sponsorship negotiations with men 3 times her age who assumed the crown on her head meant nothing above the neck. She was 28 years old. She was reigning Miss Continental Africa. She was the face of 3 international luxury brands, and she was currently in the Korean Air VIP lounge at Incheon Airport because her connecting flight to Paris had been delayed by 40 minutes, and she intended to spend every one of those minutes in peace. She had her tea. She had her book. She had chosen the chair furthest from the self-serve bar specifically to avoid small talk, which is why it was somewhat inconvenient when the small talk came to her. "Excuse me, do you speak English? Or Korean is fine. Actually, do you understand either? I'm asking because my phone is—" "The Wi-Fi isn't—" Freya looked up. The woman standing in front of her was somewhere in her early 60s, impeccably dressed in a cream boucle jacket and wide-leg trousers, hair set in a perfect silver-streaked wave, pearl earrings, worried eyes, and a phone being held out like evidence at a trial. "It keeps saying the password is wrong," the woman said. "I've typed it 4 times. I have an email to send, and if I don't send it, my business partner is going to make a decision I will regret for the rest of my life." Freya closed her book. "Let me see. The problem was that the lounge had 2 networks with near-identical names, and the woman had been connecting to the wrong one for 4 attempts." Freya fixed it in 12 seconds, handed the phone back, and watched the woman's entire face transform with relief. "Oh, thank God." "Oh, you are a lifesaver. Sit, wait, you're already sitting." "I'm going to sit." The woman dropped into the adjacent chair with zero hesitation, phone already flying as she typed. "Give me 1 moment." Freya looked at her book, looked at the woman, picked up her tea. The email was apparently sent within 90 seconds because the woman exhaled like she'd just surfaced from underwater, dropped her phone in her lap, and turned to Freya with full, undivided attention. "Kang Yeon-soo," she said, extending a hand. "I owe you my sanity." "Freya Moore." She shook it. "It was just a Wi-Fi network. At my age, Wi-Fi is everything." Yeon-soo's eyes moved over her with the particular sharpness of a woman who notices everything and files it away immediately. "You're not Korean." "No, but you speak it." It wasn't a question. She'd heard Freya's soft, precise Korean syllables when she'd read the network name aloud. "I do," Freya said simply. Yeon-soo looked delighted. "Where are you going?" "Paris." "What for?" Freya raised an eyebrow, just slightly. Most people caught that and recalibrated. Yeon-soo did not recalibrate. "Business or pleasure?" Yeon-soo pressed. "Business." "What kind?" There was a beat. Then something in Freya shifted, not softened exactly, but adjusted, because the woman wasn't being intrusive. She was just genuinely, almost childishly curious, and there was something so unguarded about it that it bypassed Freya's usual armor entirely. "I'm a brand ambassador," Freya said. "I have a partnership event with a French luxury house." Yeonsu's eyes dropped briefly to the understated gold on Freya's wrist, the perfectly tied scarf, the quiet confidence of someone who understood fashion not as decoration, but as language. "Which house?" Freya told her. Yeonsu made a sound of genuine appreciation. "My daughter-in-law, my future daughter-in-law, God willing, would love that." Then she caught herself. "I'm being too much. My son tells me I'm too much." "You're fine," Freya said, and meant it. That was how it started. 40 minutes became 2 hours because the flight delay extended, then extended again, and somewhere between Yeonsu's third question and Freya's first real laugh of the conversation, neither of them was watching the departure board anymore. Yeonsu talked about Seoul, about her family's company, about a TV drama she was watching that had made her weep 3 episodes in a row. Freya talked about Lagos, about what it meant to carry a crown in rooms that hadn't been built with you in mind, about a fabric designer in Accra she was quietly trying to help break into the European market. Yeonsu listened to that last part with her full body. "You're doing that yourself? Not through the brand?" "Through me," Freya said. "The brand gets my face. What I do with my platform is mine." Yeonsu stared at her for a long moment. Then she sat back and said very quietly, "Where have you been?" Freya laughed. A real one, surprised out of her. "Sorry?" "I've been looking for someone like you for years." Yeonsu said it plainly, like a statement of fact. "Not for me, for my son." And there it was. Freya's expression didn't change drastically, just a small, composed settling. "Ah. Don't do that face. I'm not a strange woman. I'm a mother who is tired." Yeonsu leaned forward. "He's a good man. He works too much. He talks too little. And the last woman he dated told me he had the emotional range of a very expensive appliance." She paused. She wasn't wrong. "And you think I should fix that?" Freya said, amused despite herself. "I think dinner," Yeonsu said. "One dinner. With me there. I'll be the buffer. If you hate him after the soup course, I will personally arrange your car and never mention it again." "And if I find him tolerable?" Yeonsu smiled like a woman who already knew the ending. "Then we see." Freya looked at her for a moment. She had a full schedule in Seoul before Paris. She had a brand meeting, a fitting, a call with her manager. She had absolutely no business agreeing to a dinner engineered by an airport stranger, no matter how charming. "One dinner," Freya said, "and you stay the whole time." Yeonsu had her number saved before the gate announcement finished echoing. The restaurant Yeonsu chose was the kind of place that didn't have a sign outside because if you needed a sign, you weren't meant to be there. Private dining room, floor-to-ceiling glass overlooking the Han River, a menu that changed daily based on what the chef felt like expressing. Freya arrived in a deep burgundy wrap dress and minimal gold, her locks pinned at the crown, and every member of staff they passed did a small involuntary double-take. Yeonsu was already seated and stood immediately when Freya walked in, taking both her hands like she was greeting someone she'd been waiting years for, which, Freya would later realize, she had been. "You look extraordinary," Yeonsu said, meaning it completely. "Thank you. You look wonderful yourself." Freya meant that too. Yeonsu had worn midnight blue and her best pearls, and the energy of someone who had won something before the game started. They sat. They ordered tea. Freya looked at the empty third chair and said nothing. At 8:17, Kang Soo-hyun arrived. He was tall in the way that announced itself without effort. Not aggressively, just undeniably. Dark hair, sharp jaw, the kind of bone structure that suggested his mother had once been equally devastating. He was wearing a black suit. Of course he was wearing a black suit. He scanned the room, found his mother, and walked over with the contained, measured stride of a man who moved through every space like it was a boardroom. His eyes landed on Freya, and something flickered there. Brief, quickly neutralized. Before he pulled out his chair and sat down. "You're late," Yeonsu said pleasantly. 7 minutes, he said. Traffic. Freya was on time. Freya, he said, turning to her with a polite, professionally calibrated smile, doesn't run 3 subsidiaries. It wasn't rude exactly. It was just sealed, like a room with no windows. Freya smiled back with equal politeness. No, I only manage my own career, a foundation, and 2 ongoing brand partnerships, so considerably lighter. A small silence. Yan-su looked between them with the bright, careful eyes of someone watching a weather pattern develop. Shall we order? She said. The first 20 minutes were fine. Yan-su carried conversation the way she did everything, with warmth and total shamelessness, bouncing between topics, drawing both of them in, laughing at her own stories. Freya was good company. Soo-hyun was technically present. Then Yeon-su excused herself to take a call Freya would later suspect was completely fabricated, and left them alone. The silence lasted approximately 4 seconds. My mother said you're a brand ambassador, Soo-hyun said. Among other things, Freya said, for fashion houses. Primarily, yes. He nodded slowly in the way of someone arranging their thoughts into something diplomatic. He was not entirely successful. Is that satisfying work? Long term? Freya looked at him. You're asking if I find modeling for a living fulfilling. I'm asking about career longevity. You're asking, she said very calmly, whether I have ambitions beyond my appearance. His jaw tightened slightly. I didn't say that. You implied it carefully. I was making conversation. You were making a judgment, she said, carefully worded, but still. She picked up her water glass. I have a business degree from LSE, a foundation that has funded 17 small textile businesses across West Africa, and a brand partnership that I negotiated myself without an agent because I read contracts better than most lawyers. But yes, I also wear beautiful clothes well. It's a broad portfolio. The silence that followed was a different texture than the one before. Something moved across Soo-hyun's face, not quite embarrassment, more like a man recalculating after underestimating the distance. Then, because he was who he was, instead of simply acknowledging it, he said, You're very quick to assume criticism. Freya's eyes cooled by precisely 3 degrees. And you're very quick to offer it. I was asking a question. With a tone. You don't know my tone. I've been reading Room since I was 19 years old, Freya said pleasantly. I know your tone. Yeon-su returned to the table at this exact moment, took one look at her son's expression and Freya's perfectly composed stillness, and understood everything. She sat down. She smiled. She ordered dessert. By the time the bill arrived, the conversation had been steered back to neutral ground by sheer force of Yeon-su's personality, but the damage was specific and structural, and both of them felt it. They said goodbye with courtesy and nothing else. Soo-hyun put his mother in her car, exchanged a look with the driver that communicated nothing, and left. In her car, Freya sent Yeon-su a message. Thank you for dinner. The food was beautiful, gracious, final. Yeon-su stared at the message for a long moment. Then she called Bokja. Bokja had worked for the Kang family for 22 years. She had raised Soo-hyun through 2 international moves, 3 family crises, and 1 period where he had refused to eat anything except ramyeon for an entire month when he was 9. She was small, unsmiling in the way that meant she was always about to smile, and she had the institutional knowledge of a woman who had seen everything this family was capable of and remained anyway. She answered on the 2nd ring. The dinner was a disaster, Yeon-su said without preamble. A pause. How bad? He implied she was shallow within 20 minutes. Another pause. She handled it beautifully, left him looking like a fool without raising her voice. And he reacted to being outmatched by getting stiffer, yes. Bokja made a sound that was not quite a sigh and not quite a laugh. So we're doing this. We're doing this, Yeon-su confirmed. Bokja was quiet for a moment. Then, I want it on record that I think there are simpler ways, Bokja. But I will help. Yeon-soo smiled out the car window at Seoul, moving past in its bright, indifferent way. She's remarkable, she said, softer now. The real kind. The kind that doesn't need anything from anyone and chooses you anyway. He needs someone like that. Someone who won't rearrange herself for him. He needs someone who'll tell him when he's being insufferable, Bokja said. That too. Yeon-soo straightened. She agreed to one dinner. I need to give her a reason to agree to a second. She said no second dinner? She said goodbye very politely, which is worse. Bokja exhaled. What are you thinking? I'm thinking, Yeon-soo said. Same time next week, same restaurant, completely different reason. A pause. Call them separately. Madam, I am not calling that woman and lying to her face. Not lying. Framing. That's the same. Bokja. The boy is 34, and he just insulted the most impressive woman I've met in a decade. We don't have time for ethics. A very long pause from Bokja's end. Fine, she said, but I'm logging this as emotional labor. Log whatever you want. Call them both. Soo-hyun didn't think about the dinner. This was what he told himself. He was a busy man. He had a quarter-end review approaching and 2 international partnerships requiring his attention and approximately 14 other things that mattered more than a dinner his mother had arranged without asking him. He didn't think about the dinner. He thought about it twice on Wednesday. Once while reviewing a contract on Thursday, and on Friday morning he found himself staring out his office window at the Han River and thinking about the specific, unhurried way she had said you were making a judgment. Not hotly, not to wound, just with the absolute confidence of a woman who didn't need him to agree. He did not examine why. This was occupying space in his head. He was a very busy man. His phone buzzed, his mother, dinner Saturday, just family. Bokja made japchae, your favorite. 7 p.m. He typed back, fine. He did not think about the dinner for the rest of Friday. Saturday arrived, and Soo-hyun wore a black suit. He drove himself to the restaurant. The same one which he noted but didn't question because his mother had her favorite places, and this was one of them. And walked into the private dining room at exactly 7 o'clock because he was, whatever his flaws, punctual. Freya Moore was already seated. She looked up from her menu. He looked at her. They looked at each other with the matching expression of 2 people who have just understood that they have been maneuvered by a woman in pearls. She told me family dinner, Freya said. She told me japchae, he said. A beat. Freya set her menu down slowly. There was no japchae on the table. There was, however, a bottle of wine already breathing, 2 place settings, and a handwritten card from Yeon-soo that Freya had apparently already opened and read. She slid it across the table without a word. You were both terrible. Try again. I love you. Don't call me. Iyama. Soo-hyun. Read it twice. Then he set it down, pulled out the chair across from Freya, and sat in it with the resigned composure of a man who knew his mother and had simply miscalculated today's threat level. You don't have to stay, he said. I know, she said. Neither of them left. The waiter appeared, took one careful look at the atmosphere between them, and poured the wine with the speed of a professional who understood when to be invisible. The first 10 minutes were quiet in a way that wasn't quite uncomfortable. Freya ordered with the ease of someone who knew what she wanted. Soo-hyun watched her briefly, then ordered without looking at the menu, which meant he either came here enough to have it memorized, or he simply didn't care about food when something else had his attention. Freya filed that away without comment. It was Soo-hyun who spoke first, which surprised her. The LSE, he said. What did you read? She looked at him carefully. His face was open, not warm exactly, but genuinely directed at her. Not a polite question, an actual one. Economics, she said, with a focus on development finance. He nodded once. And the foundation, the textile businesses. How do you structure the funding, grants or equity? Blended, small grants for setup, equity stake if they scale past the first year. I stay involved. She paused. Why? My company launched a similar initiative in Vietnam 2 years ago, he said. We underestimated the cultural infrastructure needed, and it failed in 14 months. I'm curious what you do differently." Freya regarded him for a moment. This was not the man from last week. Or maybe it was exactly the same man, just currently pointed in a direction that suited him. At a problem, at a question, at something real. "Community liaison," she said. "I don't go into a market without someone from that market leading the conversations. It takes longer to set up, but nothing collapses because of a wrong assumption." He was quiet for a moment. "We didn't do that." "No," she agreed, without softening it. Something shifted in the room. Not dramatically, just a small degree of rotation, like furniture rearranged by a few inches. Enough to change the feel of the space. By the time the main course arrived, they were mid-conversation about regulatory gaps and cross-border creative industry funding, which was not where either of them had expected the evening to go, and somewhere in the middle of her making a point about the IMF's blind spots, he laughed. Sudden, brief, genuine, and she found herself smiling back before she made the conscious decision to. She caught herself. Put the smile away. Took a sip of wine. He noticed. She could tell by the slight adjustment in his expression. Not offended, more like a man noting a door that had just closed and wondering what was behind it. They parted at the entrance with more courtesy than last time and less distance than the time before. He flagged her, car before she could, and she accepted that without making it significant. "Your mother is outrageous," Freya said as her car pulled up. "Yes," he agreed. "This won't keep working," she said. "No," he said, except he wasn't entirely sure that was true. She got in the car. He stood on the pavement a moment longer than necessary, then turned and walked to his own. Yeon-soo received a text from Bokja at 10:43 that night. They stayed 3 hours. He flagged her car. She didn't object. Yeon-soo put her phone down and picked up her plum wine. She allowed herself exactly 1 moment of private satisfaction. Then she called Bokja. "Phase 2, she said. "I was afraid of that," said Bokja. The call came to Freya's manager on a Monday. The Kang Group's events director reaching out about a cultural ambassador role for their upcoming annual gala. International profile, creative input, generous fee. The manager called Freya, who was in the middle of a fitting, and said yes because the terms were good and it was Seoul and she was already here. She found out it was Soo-hyun's company on Wednesday when she walked into the briefing room and he was sitting at the head of the table. He looked up. She looked at him. "The cultural ambassador role," she said slowly. "Apparently," he said. Behind him, through the glass wall, Freya caught a glimpse of Bokja passing in the corridor. Bokja, who had absolutely no reason to be in this building, walking with the focused eyes of someone who was not going to look left under any circumstances. Freya pressed her lips together, filed it, sat down. If he wanted to keep pretending his mother wasn't conducting them both like a small determined orchestra, she would let him. She had a contract and a gala to deliver, and Kang Soo-hyun was, above everything else, irritatingly competent at his actual job, which made the working part straightforward. What wasn't straightforward was how much she noticed him across a conference table, the focused stillness of him when someone was presenting, the precise, unadorned way he gave feedback, no softening, no performance, just the exact thing that needed to be said. She recognized it as a form of respect, the way he did it. He didn't dress up hard truths for rooms he thought couldn't handle them. She found that interesting. She did not tell anyone she found that interesting. 3 days into the consultancy, Yeon-soo appeared at the office. Freya was reviewing mood boards with the events team when Yeon-soo walked in with Bokja, 2 containers of homemade food, and the energy of a woman making a casual visit to a place she had orchestrated entirely. "I was nearby," Yeon-soo said. "You were not," Freya said. Yeon-soo beamed. "I brought John. Sit, eat, then I need your opinion on something." She produced her phone and showed Freya a photo. Soo-hyun at last year's gala, black suit, dark tie, the expression of a man attending his own professional funeral. "Every year," Yeon-soo said. "The same suit, the same tie, The man has the body of someone who should be wearing color, and he dresses like a tax auditor. She looked at Freya meaningfully. The gala is 3 weeks away. Freya looked at the photo, looked at Yeon-soo, looked at Bokja, who was setting out food containers with the careful neutrality of someone who had legally separated herself from this conversation. "You want me to take him shopping," Freya said. "I want you to save him from himself," Yeon-soo said. "It's gala-related, entirely professional." She brought it up to Soo-hyun the next morning in the way she brought up everything, directly, without ceremony. "Your mother wants me to update your gala look," she said. "She ambushed me with John and a photo from last year." He looked up from his laptop. "She did what?" "The black suit apparently has had its last outing." His expression moved through several things. "My suit is appropriate." "Your suit is a controlled environment," Freya said. "It's a gala, not a merger." "I don't see why." "I'm going Saturday," she said. "You can come, or she'll send Bokja with screenshots. Your choice." He chose to come, which told her more than he intended. The shopping center Freya chose was a high-end multi-brand concept store in Cheongdam-dong, where the staff knew her by name and moved with the quiet efficiency of people who understood that her time had a value. Bokja came too, Yeon-soo's condition, and sat in the waiting area outside the fitting corridor with a cup of tea and the look of someone counting down to retirement. Freya pulled the first option. Ivory. Structured. Not a dramatic departure, but warm. Soo-hyun came out of the fitting room, looked in the mirror, and said nothing for a moment. "It's not black." "Correct," Freya said. "It's very present." "You're a very present person. It suits you." She tilted her head. "But no. Too safe. Try the next one." The next one was a deep forest green suit, with a subtle texture that caught light when he moved. He stood in front of the mirror with the expression of a man being asked to do something mildly dangerous. "This is," he started. "Don't," she said. "Look at it properly. Not at the color. At the fit." He looked. And the thing was, it was perfect. Not flashy. Not a costume. Just him, except as if someone had turned the contrast up slightly. "The color is aggressive," he said. "The color is confident," she said. "There's a difference." She walked around him once, studying the shoulder line. "You wear black because it removes the variable. You don't have to think about it. Nobody has a reaction to it." He glanced at her in the mirror. "And that's a problem." "It's armor," she said simply, "which is fine. But you're going to your own company's gala. You're allowed to be seen." Something about that landed in a way she hadn't intended. She could tell by the small stillness that moved through him. She stepped back and went to pull option 3 before the moment became something she had to name. Option 3 was burgundy. She held it up and turned to him, and they both registered at the same moment that it was nearly the exact shade she had worn to the first dinner. She put it back on the rail without comment. He watched her do it. Bokja, from her chair outside, appeared to be studying the ceiling. He bought the green suit. He also, when Freya wasn't looking, asked the sales assistant to set aside a third piece she had picked up and put down. A jacket in deep cobalt she'd said was too bold for the gala, but had held against him for a half-second longer than necessary. On the way out, he fell into step beside her naturally, without either of them deciding to. "Thank you," he said, "for this." "Your mother coerced me," Freya said. "I know." A pause. "You didn't have to do it well." She glanced at him sideways. He was looking ahead, but there was something at the edge of his mouth that was close to a smile. She looked away, said nothing. But she didn't put any extra distance between them for the rest of the walk to the car. The health scare happened on a Tuesday. Freya was between meetings when Bokja called, not Yeon-soo, which was the first thing that made it feel real. Bokja's voice was measured but tight, the way voices get when they're trying not to alarm, but the alarm is already there. Madam had felt faint that morning. She'd refused the hospital. She was asking for Freya, which Bokja delivered with the faint bewilderment of someone who also found this slightly unusual but was reporting the facts. Freya was in a car within 12 minutes. She told herself on the way over that she was going because Yeon-soo was a person she cared about, which was true, and also remarkable, given that she had known the woman for less than 2 months. That was the thing about Yeon-soo. She didn't build affection slowly. She simply arrived in your life at full volume and you adjusted. The Kang family home was a modernist structure, set behind high hedges in Hanam-dong, all clean stone and glass, the kind of house that was warm despite itself. Bokja let her in and led her to the main sitting room where Yeon-soo was arranged on a daybed in a cashmere robe, looking, and Freya noticed this immediately, completely fine. Bright eyes, perfect posture, a cup of tea already in hand. "You came," Yeon-soo said, like sunrise. Freya looked at her for a long moment. Then she looked at Bokja. Bokja looked at a fixed point on the far wall and said absolutely nothing. "You're not ill," Freya said. Yeon-soo had the grace to look briefly caught. "I was faint this morning." "You look like you've been awake and plotting since 6 a.m. "Those aren't mutually exclusive." Freya pressed her lips together. She should leave. She was a busy woman with a full schedule, and she had just crossed the city for a fabricated emergency engineered by a woman who was currently sipping tea with the contentment of someone whose plan was working. She should absolutely leave. She sat down instead. "I'll make something to eat," Bokja said, and disappeared before either of them could respond, which was its own form of admission. They talked for an hour, properly, the way they had in the airport, without performance or agenda. Yeon-soo asked about Freya's family, about her mother specifically, with the genuine interest of a woman who understood that you couldn't fully know a person without knowing who made them. Freya found herself talking about her mother's sitting room in Lagos, the way every important conversation in her childhood had happened in that room, how the women in her family communicated love through proximity and food, and the particular stubborn refusal to let you leave hungry. Yeon-soo listened with her whole face. "She sounds extraordinary." "She is," Freya said. "She's also completely exhausting." Yeon-soo laughed, sudden and bright. "The best women always are." The front door opened at 6:30. Soo-hyun came in still in his work clothes, jacket over his arm, phone in hand, mid-message to someone. He stopped in the doorway of the sitting room. Freya was cross-legged on the floor near the low table where Bokja had laid out food, laughing at something his mother had said, her locks falling loose around her shoulders because she'd unpinned them at some point in the evening. The whole scene had a texture to it, warm and unguarded, and domestic in a way that made something in his chest do something he chose not to examine. "You're here," he said. "Bokja called me," Freya said, straightening slightly. "Your mother was apparently faint." He looked at his mother. His mother looked back at him with the innocent composure of a woman who had planned every detail of this moment, including the lighting. "Bokja," he said, "from the kitchen. The soup is ready." He stood there a moment longer. Then he hung his jacket on the chair, put his phone in his pocket, and sat down on the floor on the other side of the table, because the couch felt like the wrong choice, and he didn't fully understand why. They ate Bokja's soup. Yeon-soo talked, then grew theatrical about being tired and excused herself to bed at 7:45 with the timing of a woman exiting her own stage play. Bokja cleared the bowls and became very busy in the kitchen. And then it was just the two of them on the floor of the Kang family sitting room with the low light and the quiet and the city moving softly outside the glass. "She's not ill," Soo-hyun said. "No," Freya agreed. "I'm sorry she keeps doing this." "I'm not," Freya said. And then, as if surprised by her own honesty, she looked at the table. "I mean, it's become a pattern I'm aware of." "But you still came." She looked up at him. "I still came." He held her gaze for a moment, long enough to be deliberate, not long enough to be dramatic. "Why?" She considered him. The honest answer and the careful answer were the same answer tonight, which was unusual, so she gave it. "Because she matters to me, which I didn't expect." A pause. "And because you're less insufferable than I originally assessed." "High praise," he said quietly. "Don't push it," she said. He almost smiled. She watched it happen. That specific near smile she'd started cataloging without meaning to, the one that lived at the corner of his mouth and lasted exactly 2 seconds before he recalled himself. "The gala is next week," he said. "I know." "After that, your consultancy contract ends." She looked at him. Something in the air changed pressure. "Yes." He was quiet for a moment, and she recognized the particular quality of his silence, the one that meant he was deciding something. "There's a restaurant I like. Small place, no dress code. They make doenjang jjigae the way my grandmother used to. I've never taken anyone there because it isn't the kind of place you take people." He paused. "I'd like to take you." Freya was still. "Not arranged by my mother," he said. "Not work. Just—" He stopped. Started again. "I'd like to take you." She looked at him for a long moment. All the careful distance she'd been maintaining, the professional framing, the amused detachment, the very sensible wall she'd constructed after that first dinner, was still there. She could feel it. She just couldn't quite remember, in this specific light, why she'd built it. "Okay," she said. The restaurant was everything he'd said and nothing she'd expected. 10 tables. Handwritten menu. The owner knew him by name and showed no reaction to Freya whatsoever, which she appreciated more than she could say. They sat in the corner by the window where the street outside moved quietly past, and nobody looked at them, and it was the first time in longer than she could remember that Freya Moore felt like a person rather than a presence. He ordered for both of them without asking, then caught himself. "Sorry, I should have—" "It's fine," she said. "I trust your taste. Here, at least." "Only here?" "You bought a green suit. I'm cautiously optimistic." He laughed. A full one this time, not the brief surprised version, and it did something irreversible to the atmosphere. They talked differently here, without the gala framework, without the office glass walls, without his mother's bright eyes tracking everything. He asked about the pageant circuit, not in the way people usually asked, with the barely concealed condescension of someone expecting a shallow answer, but with real curiosity about what it took, what it cost, what she was doing with it that she'd chosen rather than inherited. She told him about the first time she'd walked into a competition room and understood that the point wasn't to win. It was to be so completely, specifically herself, that they had no choice but to notice. "I decided I wasn't going to perform being impressive," she said. "I was just going to be it." He looked at her across the small table. "That's exactly what you do," he said quietly. "I noticed it the first night, before I decided to be an idiot about it." Freya went still. "I misjudged you," he said. "Quickly and badly. I want you to know I'm aware of that." She held his gaze. This was the thing about him she'd been slowly, reluctantly discovering. That, underneath the sealed surface and the controlled bluntness, was a man who paid attention. He had simply, until recently, been paying it in the wrong direction. "You were an idiot," she said. "Yes." "And then you bought a green suit." "I did." "And you brought me here." "I did." She looked at him for a moment longer. Then she reached across the table and turned his hand palm up, which surprised him enough that he went completely still, and she looked at the lines of it like she was reading something, which she wasn't, and then she put her hand over his, which she hadn't decided to do until it was already done. He turned his hand slowly until his fingers were between hers. Neither of them said anything. Walking out later into the cool night air, they stood on the pavement in the quiet of a street that asked nothing of them, and he turned toward her at the same moment she turned toward him, and the kiss happened, the way things happen when they've already been decided, without rush, without drama, just the soft, certain fact of it. Her hand against his chest, his hand at her jaw, the city carrying on indifferently around them. When they broke apart, he didn't move back. She didn't either. "Still cautiously optimistic?" he said quietly. "Getting there," she said. But she was smiling when she said it. The gala was everything it was supposed to be. 300 guests, the Kang Group's annual showcase of everything the company had built and intended to build, the kind of evening where the champagne was cold and the conversations were calculated, and everyone was performing a version of themselves with the volume turned up. Freya had helped design the cultural programming. The textile displays, the artist showcase, the way the room had been arranged to feel like an arrival rather than a transaction. And standing at the edge of it, watching it work, was its own quiet satisfaction. Soo-hyun found her at 9 o'clock. He was wearing the green suit. She looked at him and said nothing. Just let the corner of her mouth do the talking. "Don't," he said. "I didn't say anything." "You were thinking loudly." "I was thinking you look good," she said simply. "You're allowed to just receive that." He stood beside her and looked out at the room. "You did well," he said. "The room feels different, alive." That was the point. They stood like that for a moment, shoulders nearly touching, watching the evening move, easy in a way that had crept up on both of them while they were busy pretending it wasn't. Across the room, Yeon-soo was in gold, holding court with a group of board members' wives who had no idea they were in the presence of someone who had personally engineered the cultural programming lead standing next to the host. Bokja was nearby with a tray, having been recruited for the evening against her better judgment, watching Freya and Soo-hyun with the expression of someone who could see the finish line and was cautiously unwilling to celebrate until they crossed it. Then it unraveled. It was a board member, older, jovial, the kind of man who said things at parties he would never say in meetings. He found Soo-hyun near the bar and clapped him on the shoulder and said, "Loud enough? Your mother really pulled this one together, didn't she? Had her people call the ambassador, arrange the whole consultancy herself, smart woman?" He raised his glass toward Yeon-soo across the room. "Old-fashioned matchmaking dressed up as business. You have to admire the creativity." He laughed. Moved on. Soo-hyun stood completely still. Freya, who was 2 steps to his left and had heard every word, did not move either. The consultancy. She'd known about the restaurant. She'd known about the health scare. She had not known about the consultancy, had not known that her manager's call had been arranged, that her presence in that briefing room had been constructed from the ground up, the contract she'd agreed to on the strength of its terms, the work she'd done, the room she was standing in, the past 3 weeks of proximity, all of it routed back to Yeon-soo. She set her glass down, quietly, and walked toward the exit. Soo-hyun watched her go. Then he looked at his mother, who had seen everything from across the room and was already standing, gold dress catching the light, the bright composure of her face doing something complicated. He walked to her. "The consultancy," he said. Low, controlled. "Soo-hyun, the consultancy, Aoma. Not just the restaurant. The contract." Yeon-soo held his gaze. "Yes. She didn't know." "No." He looked at his mother for a long moment. Yeon-soo looked back at him without flinching, because she was not a woman who flinched, but there was something in her eyes that was as close to apology as her nature permitted. "You should go after her," Yeon-soo said. "You should have stayed out of it," he said quietly. Then he walked away. He found Freya outside on the terrace steps, coat over her gala dress, looking out at nothing in particular, with the still composure of a woman who was feeling a great deal and showing very little of it. The city breathed below them. He stood beside her, and didn't say anything right away, because he knew her well enough now to know she didn't need filling. "The foundation work is real," he said finally. "You know that." "I know," she said. "Everything you built in that room tonight." "I know," she said again, softer. "That's mine. I know that." She exhaled. I agreed to that contract because it was good work. Not because of any of this. And I didn't know I couldn't tell the difference." He was quiet. "It's not about the scheme," she said. "I knew she was scheming. I let her, which is its own thing. It's that I didn't know how far back it went." She looked at him. "Did you?" "No," he said. "I found out the same moment you did." She searched his face, found nothing but the particular directness she'd come to trust. Looked away. "I'm not angry at her," Freya said. "I should be. I can't quite get there." A pause. "She's impossible to be angry at." "I've had 34 years of practice," he said. "I still can't manage it." Something loosened slightly in the air. He turned toward her. Need to tell you something, and I'd like to do it before my mother appears on this terrace in 3 minutes, which is approximately how long she'll wait. Freya looked at him. Everything she arranged, the restaurant, the consultancy, all of it. I would have got there, he said. Slower, badly, probably with another miscalculation somewhere, but I would have got there. He held her gaze. Because I have not been able to stop paying attention to you since the night you told me I had a tone, which I did. She was very still. You're the only person I've met in years who doesn't rearrange themselves around me, he said. Do you know how rare that is? Do you know what it's like to be in a room with someone who simply is what they are, completely, with no adjustment for the audience? He stopped, started again, more quietly. I didn't know what to do with you, so I was an idiot. And then I bought a green suit. And then you bought a green suit, she said. And then I brought you to my restaurant. His voice dropped. And then you put your hand over mine. The terrace was quiet. The city below them carried on in its vast, indifferent, beautiful way. Freya. He said her name like it was a full sentence. I am asking you, directly, without my mother's involvement, to be with me, properly, just us. She looked at him for a long moment. All the careful cataloging she'd been doing, the near smiles, the precise silences, the moment in the fitting room, his hand turning in hers, assembled itself into something clear and inevitable. You're still occasionally insufferable, she said. Yes, he agreed, and your default suit color is a problem we'll continue to address. Apparently. And if your mother ever engineers my professional life again, I will handle her directly. I'll help you, he said. She stepped forward and kissed him. Her choice, her timing, no city pavement and no ambient moment deciding it for her. Just her hands, against the lapels of the green suit and his arms coming around her and the absolute, unhurried certainty of it. When she pulled back, she said, yes, properly, just us. He exhaled like he'd been holding something for a long time. Behind the terrace door, which had been cracked open for the last 4 minutes, Yeon-su pressed both hands to her mouth and turned to Bokja, who was standing with crossed arms and a deeply compromised expression, because she was also smiling. I told you, Yeon-su whispered. You meddled outrageously, Bokja whispered back, and it worked. Bokja looked through the glass at Freya, laughing at something Soo-hyun said, at the green suit, at the particular way he was looking at her like she was a solution to a problem he hadn't known he had. She pressed her lips together. It worked, she confirmed. Yeon-su straightened, walked serenely back to the gala, found her table, opened her clutch, and took out a small notebook, cream leather, slightly battered, and on the page with Freya Moore's name, she drew a careful little heart. Then she closed it, ordered champagne, and looked very pleased with herself for the rest of the evening. So, would you have let a mother set you up? Or would you have walked out after that first dinner? Drop your answer in the comments. I want to know exactly how stubborn you are. If you made it all the way here, you already know what to do. Like this video, share it with someone who needs a love story today, and subscribe so you don't miss what's coming next. The Nesties always know first. I'll see you in the next one.